This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 14th of October 2019, and I am 2J.
I am Tum.
And I am GK.
Today is actually a very important day today, guys, isn't it? And there's something important that we thought that we'd want to highlight for all of you. Today is October 14th, and it is KDF Day, the day that we celebrate our Jeshi, our soldiers, their families, and their loved ones. At the Fort Hall School of Government, we do not take the KDF family for granted. We register our love, prayers, and thoughts to the families that donate their young ones to serve in our Jeshi. We register our passion for the nation, the passion that our young KDF soldiers carry to the battlefield with the enemy. We pledge our allegiance to the flag that they fly into enemy territory, the flag that unifies their eyes, the flag that they swore to protect, and the flag that summons the spirit that is Kenya. Happy KDF Day.
Could not agree more. Happy KDF Day. One military thinker taught us that a soldier does not fight because he hates what is in front of him. He fights because he loves what he left back at home. Our KDF soldiers are not motivated by hate for the enemy. They are driven by what they left back at home, their families, loved ones, and country. Another military thinker taught us something different. General G.S. Payton taught us that the object of war is not to die for your country. The object of war is to make the enemy bastard die for his country. And this has been the motto of our KDF soldiers. They have chosen not to die for country, but to have the enemy bastard die for his. Happy KDF Day.
Wow, powerful. Happy KDF Day. We pledge our prayers and thoughts to the KDF families. And we do so because a soldier who has seen war never stops seeing it. He sees it in his dreams, in the silence of his sleep. He hears it in his head, in the calmness of the day. He feels it in his nerves as he cuddles his young ones. And a soldier who has seen war is a soldier who has seen God.
Yes.
But there is one more thing. We said that the object of war is not for you to die for your country. It is for you to get the enemy bastard to die for his country. Does this mean that no KDF soldier has died for country? And the answer is yes. KDF soldiers do not die. They just fall. That is why we call them fallen soldiers. The country may not know them all, but the country owes them all. And instead of mourning because they fell, we celebrate them because they stood. Instead of mourning because they slept, we thank God that they lived. We celebrate our fallen soldiers. Now they rest in the bosom of Abraham. Happy KDF Day. So in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Standard, new hefty benefits for teachers. In the Star, revealed frantic bid to dump wife's body. And in the Daily Nation, top of the world.
Oh, yes.
So we have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? Now, personally, it should be positive. I go with the Daily Nation.
I think all the headlines missed the opportunity to congratulate our runners.
Yes, exactly.
I think you were saying earlier that now Kenya has all the
it holds all the titles for half marathon and full marathon
in the world.
In road running, yes.
Therefore, they missed quite the opportunity. So what do we do?
So we say we run the world.
Exactly, we toss this.
And there we have our winning headline from the Daily Nation.
Absolutely.
On to our political pieces that we call cartoons in this this country where we also have a 3-part criteria that we use.
Yeah.
We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it sarcastic or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Absolutely.
So in the
Star.
describe for us.
Absolutely. The legend himself, caricature of the greatest runner on earth, Eliud Kipchoge. And I think he should have been drawn bigger than Abiy Ahmed.
Yeah, he looks like a tiny guy there.
Yes. Next to him is Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Although it looks like he's in the shadow. I don't know what. Maybe there was a play on shadows there. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know, maybe. And
Winner of the Nobel.
Winner of the Nobel Peace
Yes.
Prize. Alongside is the greatest runner on earth. He should have been bigger than Abiy.
Yeah.
And then it says unlimited.
Absolutely. It says unlimited.
Yeah.
It's been a great weekend for Africans, hasn't it?
Good time to be African. Good time to be black.
Actually, yeah, Abiy is the 11th African recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think we're doing great things.
However, you know what I wondered? How come Eritrea, who was on the other side of this peace deal, didn't
did
even
not
get
it. Absolutely.
just teamwork makes the dream work? It wouldn't have been possible had Eritrea not agreed, right?
Do you think Uhuru and Raila should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize?
For handshake?
Yeah.
I don't think that meets the criteria.
But can we park it? I quite like it.
I think we park it, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Next, we look at the Daily Nation.
Well, I mean, there's peace in Kenya now, so...
All right. Yes. A drawing by Iga, and it's a drawing of KRA scratching. I think this is Mbolo scratching his head after watching Eliud Kipchoge breaking the 1:59 barrier, and next to him is his subordinate, and Mbolo is asking, "Is that 1:59 the time, prize money, or tax?"
I mean, it's funny on many levels because I think one, he's commenting on how useless KRA is, right? They're a little bit incompetent, if we know what to say that the least.
No, I actually think it's because of their hunger and everything.
However, if Kipchoge, I mean, he looks like a smart man who surrounded himself with smart people.
Yes,
I saw
absolutely.
even Donald Kipchoge had flown to Vienna.
Yeah.
So if he's clever, then
Hide the money.
yes. And there's a difference between tax evasion and avoidance. And
Exactly.
one is a smarter strategy.
Absolutely.
However, I think, as we always say about Iga, comic strip.
Yes,
Absolutely.
please toss.
Absolutely.
And Kaso is with us today.
Kaso, what?
I quite like this one. He did a good job.
It still looks like a textbook drawing.
Maybe it's his style.
Okay, let me describe it.
Yes.
It's a drawing of a maternity ward, and they are all man of babies, and they've all been named Eliud Kipchoge. But incoming is a nurse holding a baby, and one nurse asks, "Let me guess, another Eliud Kipchoge?" And then the other nurse says, "No, this one is called Ineos."
And you know what? This is so true. It's like when Barack Obama visited Kenya, they actually said that there was an influx of babies which were being named Barack Obama, Hussein, whatnot. So it's bound to happen.
I know someone in
And it's
Kisumu.
very flattering to find all these baby Kipchoges from all over the country, not just...
It's a unifying thing.
Yes,
I know a mother somewhere in Kisumu who named their child Hurricane Katrina.
Oh my goodness. All right, so if we were to decide
between the Kipchoge cartoons, I go with Kaso. I quite like it
as well
because he's also caught on to Kenyan culture.
Exactly, which I think is appreciated
with the naming culture. So Kaso, finally, of the standard, you give us a winning cartoon. And what is our final thought?
And now our final thought, inspired by a book entitled Mau Mau in Kenya, an analysis of peasant revolt by a man called Munyebari Maloba.
Yeah, so Mau Mau and Kenya, an analysis of a peasant revolt, written in 1993. So much like what we did last week, again this week in the run-up to Mashujaa Day, we want to take a look at the heroes who defined this country, who gave us independence and who fought for our right to be Kenyans. So I think the first thing that we wanted to do was look at the origin of the name Mau Mau.
Yes.
So I know you have a lot of strong feelings, right? But however, I'm going to stick with my opinion that there is no origin, or the origin of the word Mau Mau is uncertain.
Okay.
You can express your views in a moment, just hold on. So some Mau Mau members claim that they never wanted to be referred to as Mau Mau, and they actually preferred the military title Kenya Land and Freedom Army, KLFA. Some Kambas say that the name came from Ma Uma, meaning our grandfathers, because we know that Ma Ma was our elders. But also others say that as the movement progressed, a Swahili backronym came into the foray. And it was Muzungu Aende Ulaya, Mwafrika Apate Uhuru. We take this moment to congratulate you. I know I've blundered quite a few times before. So just very slightly translated, that is, let the foreigner go back abroad, let the African regain independence. But another one, which I believe, is that others suggest that the British actually were the ones referring, using the term Mau Mau, because they didn't want to give them international legitimacy by calling them the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. Because by the time you're saying Kenya Land and Freedom, you know, on the international stage, that is a very big claim that the colonial government was denying us.
Absolutely.
So that's just some of the background.
I like that.
Do you want me to say what Mau Mau means?
Go ahead.
This is exactly what it means.
What does it mean?
This is what my seniors told me.
Okay.
They said Mau Mau is the translation. It's a corruption for Uma, Uma, Uma. Now in Kikuyu, Uma is to come out, but it was said in such harsh tones, Uma, Uma, Uma. And the reason they said it is because it signaled that some people were coming, and these people were the colonialists, all right, that they were coming to get them, the colonialists and the home guards.
So it was like a warning.
Yes, a warning. And therefore, if you had contraband or you had like Mokenya things on you, you take that piece of paper because it had lists of all Mau Mau adherents, and instead of throwing it in the fire, you probably eat it, and then you take off the forest or you take off the bush, so that by the time the colonialist soldiers were to show up, you're not there. That's what it means. So it is corruption of saying Uma, Uma, Uma. So when you say it so many times, say Uma, 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 Uma.
Well, they definitely fought for your right to have very table.
So this book presents an introduction to the Mau Mau movement and the part that it played in Kenya's nationalism and independence. So when the revolt broke out in 1952, we know that the state of emergency was announced.
Absolutely.
And the colonial authorities refused to acknowledge that there was any legitimate reason for such an uprising. And so I think as we begin this conversation, we might ask the question, what led to the Mau Mau uprising? What is some of the context that was existing around that time? And I think I'll just highlight three things, but I'm sure there's many more. So the first one is land reform. As we know that they were called the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. So as early as 1892, the colonial government had given themselves the power to compulsorily acquire land for the railway. And so we see this trend continue with some of the declarations that the government had in 1902 and 1915. So according to the government, the African occupation of land was detrimental to economic development. Essentially, they said that we were not able to till the land to sufficiently support the government.
We were not adding value to
Oh my God.
So this very seriously limited the production and livelihood, especially in central Kenya. And so this created a lot of tension between the old traditional landowners, where they had the community land situations, and the new landowners who had titles that were given by the government. And then the second thing we see is over-congestion and economic strife. So land scarcity in Kikuyu areas inevitably led to land overuse, which increased the agricultural and economic problems of central Kenya. So you have a lot of things surrounding this kind of issue. One, there was a huge increase in population, so in central Kenya. So what happens is that then there's a demand for food. Then at the same time, World War II is going on. So the government said that the Kenyan farmers needed to produce more and more food in order to support the struggles of the soldiers. All the while, the colonial government were fully aware of the overpopulation, congestion, soil erosion, and failing living standards. And then at the same time, you have a lot of things which I think you still see today in central Kenya. A lot of over-drinking, which led to an increase in crime.
You saw it.
No, I'm saying that some of these things...
We did propaganda.
No, some of these things still exist today. So, for example, by 1948, there were 28,886 Kikuyus living in Nairobi. And that amounted to 45% of the total Africans living in Nairobi. And in the book, they give the example of how there were 4,000 people living in this one space that was actually meant for only 1,500 people. And then the last thing is this cultural shift. You have this clash of generations, specifically between the older men and the younger men. So the older men were trying to really hold on to the old tradition. And the younger men were saying, no, look at the way that the country is moving right now. There's a shift that is happening, and we need to move with that. And I think that the most interesting thing that comes out of this book, because as I say, it's an analysis of a peasant revolt. And I think some of this might be conjecture history.
It should be debunked.
So they say in this book that a lot of if you look at the history of social movements and peasant revolutions to be specific, if you look at European revolutions, they were never led by peasants. But they say that the Mau Mau is a very interesting case study
peculiar
because
one.
they say it was purely led by peasants,
Yeah.
and that the Mau Mau did not have any revolutionary intellectuals as part of their core group.
Yes.
And so you have peasants who are leading them, and they say that's maybe why it didn't have as much steam as it could have,
Yes.
because
Yes.
it was peasants leading peasants.
And we know that that isn't true. Isn't
Exactly.
It? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
So
one of
we
the
had
facts.
a lot of intellectuals who
Absolutely.
had joined the movement
Yeah.
and were instrumental in planning it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Do you guys know where the name Fort Hall came from?
I'm sure you will tell us.
Do you know? All right.
Fort Hall Moranga,
Okay.
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, there's a man who was called Chief Njiri. Chief Njiri was a colonial chief in Fort Hall. Then it was known as Moranga. Now, he formed a private guard to call it that, and they ended up calling it the Home Guards. Now, the Home Guards were these fellow soldiers that were actually created to fight the Mau Mau. And the Roman Catholic Church then, as constituted in Kikuyu land, used this group, and until 1953, that's when they were constituted and recognized as, what do they call it? The Defense Forces, part of the British Colonial Defense Forces. And their strategy was to disorganize and to divide society.
Yeah.
And this Maloba man writes the technique of power of the British colonial organization. And this is what he says. So the technique of power consists in relying on the favorable minority in order to rally the neutral majority and neutralize or eliminate the hostile minority. Now, the Home Guards were so successful in killing the Mau Mau that by the time they were done, 42% of the numbers that Mau Mau suffered were actually inflicted by the Home Guards. It translates to about 4,000.
They were brutal to their own.
Yes, 4,686 people just murdered by these people called Home Guards.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
Very crazy.
Yeah.
So in part 3 of this book, she talks about a process they call rehabilitation.
Yes.
Now, what would happen was, in 1953, the emergency is happening.
Yeah.
They create these detention camps and work camps, right?
Yeah.
And so they proceeded from the doctrine, or the premise that the Kikuyu had been indoctrinated with terrorism and evilness through Mau Mau.
Yes.
Yeah.
And their job was to decontaminate.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you come, their way was, we bring you in, we classify you in 3 groups.
Yeah.
So if you are a black, you were basically hardcore Mau Mau.
Yes.
You were probably an oath administrator.
Yeah.
You were very deeply immersed in the ideology of Mau Mau.
Absolutely.
And then the majority of these detainees were actually in the grey area.
Yes.
So they were classified as grey.
Yeah.
They were seen to have committed some crimes, but the government could not fully convict them because they didn't have proof.
Yes.
So if there was just any suspicion, you were thrown into these work camps and you were grey.
Yeah.
You were finally classified as white after having gone through...
Oh, and white here is pure and
Yes.
innocent.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, right.
Yeah.
So you're cleared, and now once you're white, you're able to now transition back into society.
Yeah.
Now there were 2 main detention camps set up, one in Kajiado and one in Athi River.
Yes.
Athi River was the training base for what they called psychological warfare.
Oh.
Now peep this, it made me very angry.
Yeah.
So the process of conditioning included undermining and breaking down.
Yes.
So the idea was we would make sure that your morale and your ability to come together as a solid group wasn't happening.
Absolutely.
So they would put on mics and every so often they start chanting, "You've been fooled, you are lost and forgotten. Your families, your women, everybody despises you."
Yes.
And they would do this constantly on huge megaphones, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing they realized was we can't give them privacy, because if we give them privacy, they will constantly group up.
Yes.
So they had no right to their own privacy. So that invasion was continually happening to the population.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that they said was there was a need for a spiritual rebirth.
Yes.
So the emergency was a golden opportunity for government and colonial masters to sort of indoctrinate us with this mass evangelism.
Absolutely.
So the government was sponsoring churches, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this. If you go to Nyeri, there's a heavy Catholic presence. If you go to Kiambu, it's a very PCEA or Presbyterian presence. If you go to another area, it's Anglican. So they wanted to divide society and tell you, you're not good enough. What you knew before was evil and also was crass. What we are teaching you is manners and hygiene. So they were
bringing modernization.
Now this is the other thing. The second in command in every camp was called an ideological training officer.
Whoa.
And he was almost always a priest.
Yes.
A white priest, right?
Yeah.
And then So once you've confessed, they allow you to earn some money as you work in the work camps. They allow you to have a better life, but not as good, right?
Yes.
Then they realized that as they turned these Mau Mau detainees, some of them were becoming loyalists.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying, that some of these home guards started to become even more brutal to their own.
Absolutely.
As they tried to please their
masters.
Yes, their masters.
Yeah.
Then the other thing was manual labor. For instance, the Embakasi airport was actually built by the Mau Mau detainees. So manual labor was used as a tool for inculcating discipline, communal living.
Yes.
And get this, the spirit of cheerful obedience. So detainees had to be obedient, submissive, and cheerful
at the same time.
I mean, it's completely crazy. So the turning point was in 1959. Hola camp in Mombasa, which was for the black activists, the really hardcore guys. They were being forced to do manual labor. They refused.
Absolutely.
In retaliation, 11 of them died. But the British then found it hard to cover this up. And this is now what makes the turning point. So their other mission, what you had said, was land consolidation. Quick. And their thing was, listen, for us to stop a revolt, they used this thing called the Swinnerton Plan. So we moved from communal land ownership, which is what Mau Mau elders were used to, and actually other elders in Kenyan society, to individual titles. Now the home guards come together, the loyalists, they see a gap. They're saying, listen, we have a chance if we impress the government to get the individual title.
Absolutely.
That's where you start seeing the division between your elder Mau Mau and the younger generation. And this is what they said. In order for, this was going to be the carrot to the war to the Mau Mau war. They were going to give land to those who were loyal to them. And the idea is that the British wanted to create a middle class. If you create a middle class with your views, they're not likely to retaliate against you. So that was the thing that hinged on future stability in Kenya, creating landowners who are just like the British, but not quite. So that was what I got from
there is one thing you said that made me think. There is a strategy they used to kill the Mau Mau, and this was starvation. Now, back in 1954, a man called General Warohio Itoti, otherwise known as General China, was captured, and he was captured by a man called Ian Henderson. Now, Ian Henderson could speak Kikuyu very fluently. Now,
Ian Henderson is a
Mzungu man. Now, General China, he gave the exact intricate details of how the Mau Mau functioned. And there was this guy called the passive wing. The passive wing are the guys who gave food to the Mau Mau. Now, these guys, the intelligence they got is they took out Kikuyus from their villages. They took them into camps, into labor camps. And that forced the Mau Mau to move away from the reserves where they were, because they were being fed by these labor camps, to move directly to the forests. Right? Now, in the forests, they were cut off from aid, from funding, from food. And by the time they were done, there were about only remaining 500 militants in the forest, away from 11,500 militants that were Mau Mau.
Isolated.
Wow. So I think this will be an interesting week.
It will be.
Absolutely.
So we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation, top of the world, and a winning cartoon, a first for Casso, from the Standard. So this week we're going to be looking at Mau Mau, what they achieved, their mixed legacy. So we urge you to stay with us as we look at whether this triumphant liberation movement is getting the credit that it deserves. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on TV, Pang Free to Air, Star Times, Go TV. Have a good evening.
Yes.